Parasites can cause significant production losses and inefficiencies in livestock farming. Parasites exemplify the challenges and opportunities around climate change. Dr. Philip Skuse and Dr. Fiona Kenyon from Modern Research Institute have been studying the changing behaviours of parasites due to climate change.
My name is Philip Skuse. I'm a principal scientist at the Modern Research Institute in Edinburgh. I've been there for about the last 25 years working on various aspects of sustainable control of parasites in livestock. Parasites are ubiquitous. It's a very successful biological life form, and they cause all sorts of problems for humans and animals and the environment. So they're a major constraint on efficient livestock production, sheep and cattle. There's a number of different species we encounter in Scotland and across the UK. Some are really quite damaging, and it's important that farmers are aware of them. You have parasites, for example, like Nematodirus, which is a real problem in spring in the lambs. Eggs are on pasture, they have little larval stages inside them. They're waiting to hatch, and what triggers them is a cold spell followed by a warming weather in the spring, and they all hatch out together and can cause real problems. But you've also got things like Helminth, which is quite a large roundworm, and it lives in the stomach, but it's a blood feeder, and it's a really nasty parasite, and it likes hot, dry conditions, and when it rains, the eggs all hatch. So we have to think about those kinds of conditions too. The liver fluke, which is really quite a large parasite that lives in the liver system of sheep and cattle, about the size of cornflakes when they're adults. They lay lots of eggs, again, that go out on pasture in the dung. They hatch and get into a little mud snail, and they're mud coloured, so they're really hard to find, but they're out there and they spread disease. They actually amplify the fluke infection and release cysts onto pasture, onto the blades of grass that the animals eat, and that causes real problems like liver damage in sheep and cattle, which can be very severe and can quite often be fatal.
Parasite eggs and larvae are found on pasture, so are influenced by climate change.
And there are two aspects to our focus on climate change. One would be adaptation. How do we adapt to what climate change is bringing? And also, how do we mitigate the impacts that climate change is having and that parasites are having on our livestock? So they're exquisitely affected by the climate, by the weather patterns, rainfall and temperature, and over time that's climate. So we see changing patterns of seasonality, so we see disease out of season. It pops up in places we don't expect to see, so places that never had fluke before, suddenly the East Coast we see fluke again. We need to be aware of that, we need to be monitoring, so that's one of the things farmers can do, and we would encourage them to do that. Farmers can do a variety of things to monitor parasites. You can take blood tests for some of the parasitic diseases like liver fluke. You can also look for clinical signs, so look for animals that aren't performing as well as they should be. The most convenient test for farmers to use is the fecal egg counting, because animals conveniently put parasite eggs out onto pasture in their feces, so these can be extracted and counted at a testing lab, so that's a really important thing to do, and farmers can do some of that themselves. It's not too difficult, and it does give you some very useful information about what's out there, what's changing, how things are responding to treatment. So you can see how insidious they are. They're out there, they're changing with the climate, they're changing with the pasture management and farm management strategies, so it's something we need to be aware of, and as I say, the best tools for that would be around monitoring, so we know what we're dealing with, and fecal egg counting is one of probably the easiest and most useful tests that farmers can do.